Christine. You ready to blow some shit up today?
Of course, that's what we do.
I'm stoked. We're getting into it.
So I have a question for you.
All right, let's do it.
If you were to pick the emoji that matches your personality, what's the emoji you would choose?
Okay. Let me think. The one that I use the most, let's see if this, I don't know. You tell me if this matches my personality. The one that I use the most is the one with like the straight line teeth. You're like the face, like I send that one the most. And that's my that conveys to me like slightly, like somewhat disappointed, like misalignment of expectations. Like I'm like, I think we might have missed that one. I do that with family. I do that with our team a lot. Or like they say something that's like, or if it's like if there's like a response, like something didn't go as planned, like I send that one a lot, where I'm just like, ooh, like, I don't know. What do you think? Is that?
That's fair.
I feel like my strategic operations brain. I think that kind of is in alignment, right? There's like, if it doesn't go perfectly as planned, then that's kind of my feeling. So yeah, it's a great question. What's yours?
I don't know. I'm really loving all of the like annoying things on Zoom because you can like do hearts, and I notice I like do a little heart thing all the time. So like I'm extreme, right? Like when we work with people from Asia or specifically Japan, I've been told that like you can't love multiple things. There should be different words for it because I'm like, oh my God, I love that. And so I think it'd probably be like the heart eyes or like the blowy kiss thing, which sometimes I think about it, I'm like, oh, that could be taken kind of wrong, but I use that one a lot. And I feel like that I'm like, I just like love everything. Or maybe there's like two, I'd have to be extra. It's either the heart or like the mad face. Like I do like the fire guy, the super pissed. So like I have like two emotions. It's like love it, fucking hate it.
I send the I call it the smoochy face.
Yeah.
I send that one a lot, and I've realized like I do that like if I'm just trying to say like thank you or like I appreciate it. I'm like, oh, I think that got misconstrued. Like I'm not saying like it's like sexy. Like I'm just like trying to be like thanks, like I've checked myself a few times and recognized that probably wasn't the one I should send. It's at the top of my like favorites list, so it's also just because I'm usually trying to do things really quickly. I just send the first like one that pops up, like even if it's not appropriate. I'm like, well, I was like a thumbs up would be better, but smoochy face is the first one, so I'm just gonna send that.
It'd be so fun to like do analyze how different Enneagram types or different personality types like utilize emojis and like the meanings behind emojis based on your personality type. That could be a whole episode.
Interesting. Yeah. There's got to be, I'm sure there's definitely like ways that plays out based on how people like see themselves in the world and how people like do or don't overthink things, or the list goes on.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's set the stage. This is our first episode, Impact Minded. Welcome all. We are going to just outline a few kind of expectations for this podcast, what this podcast means to us, why we got into it, who it's for, to set the stage, and to hopefully get everyone excited. This is I've been doing podcasts for a long time. This is a medium that I believe in, and it's a way that I like to connect with the world. It's a way that I like to provide value in the world. So I'm super excited. This is something that you and I have been talking about for a long time, and we finally did it. That's one of the things we're going to talk about today. We want to touch on is just like when do you pull the trigger? I know it's something that like you and I have talked about a lot behind the scenes. So let's dive in. Let's start with why now for Impact Minded? Because this, like, we've been talking about this for a bit. I mean, I'd say it's like over a year, maybe, give or take. I don't know. Why now? And then like, what is the takeaway for that kind of our decision to do this? How can other folks apply that same reasoning or that same thought process to maybe move on things that they're stuck on?
Yeah. Well, maybe we have the same answers, maybe we don't. But I think for me, we've been talking about it for a while. And like it actually, the great thing is this actually started over an amazing sushi dinner. So for those of you who don't know us, we're both foodies and we love the best food. So we'll always take recommendations and we go to a lot of places in the world. So we're always looking for great spots. Sushi being one of those. And we were like literally talking about the culture of how amazing this restaurant was. And just like the experience, everything, the through line. Taylor and I talk a lot about the through line of business and the through line of culture and doing it from a place of your why. And like when you do that, your employees will then in turn, or the people who are supposed to build with you, say, I'm in, AKA Impact Initiative. So they're going to follow you. And I love how this started because it didn't solely come from, a lot of times in business, we start things from a place of a problem. Like, I'm going to do this thing because I'm going to solve this fucking problem. It didn't come necessarily from there. It came from this like literal obsession with this amazing experience and being able to talk about the stuff that's going right in leadership and in business and how we can do more of that. And so I think part of it is really from that. The other side of it is honestly maximizing our time. There's a lot of people that I am super passionate about helping that we don't have the time or the capacity for, or they're not ready. You're not ready for us yet. And so I think part of this also is to be able to share real stuff that you can implement today. And I think the problem in leadership and making an impact, whether you run a team or you run a family, you'll hear over the next, so many months or years, however long we run this. I think everyone is a leader, and I think we have to intentionally look at how we're leading. But so many times we talk about leadership instead of giving strategies for leadership. And so I think part of it is also a desire to watch leaders grow and do better, because when the leader's healthy and the leader has what they need, everyone in turn wins. And so I think there's a real opportunity to get real tools, real strategies and concepts in your hands so that you can be better. And in turn, everyone wins. Your families win, your teams win, and ultimately you win. Your impact happens. And we have no pause on impact. That's something you'll hear me talk a lot about. We have no pause on impact. So if there's no pause button, it's either a positive or negative impact. And so I think there's a real opportunity to give our listeners the ability to think through the decisions that they're making and actually understand, fast forward 10 years, fast forward 100 years, what's that impact that we're actually making? So for me, it's that. It's like, let's highlight the things that are going really right and like talk about the shit that's working for leaders already right now so that people can do more of that. And then also let's solve a lot of great problems that don't have to be problems, so that we all win. So that's mine. And I really sucked at leadership, and a lot of like I've epically fucked it up. So sharing my experiences and getting uncomfortable is a personal goal. So that's my why.
I totally forgot that this came from our sushi meal. But yeah, no, I remember that now, and you're totally right. I'm totally in alignment. I think for me, just to kind of add to all of the great points that you made, which I'm totally in agreement with, I think it's also a function of recognizing where I wanted to spend my time and getting really clear on like what was a hell yes and what was in alignment with my mission, and my mission is to give people the tools, resources, and relationships to reach their full potential. And so if I show up in service of that every day, then this podcast was such an obvious answer, and like you and I had a conversation some months back when we started the process of actually building this and set a deadline for ourselves and like, okay, we're going to launch. I was like, this, like we have to fucking do it. I was like, what am I even doing? Like, why would I turn away from this, right? Or why would I push back on this? And so I think for me, like in terms of what I hope people will get out of this as we continue to unpack our thoughts and takeaways on leadership and how we show up in the world, is that I really want people to get to a place where they recognize or feel like they are taking action in the direction of the things that matter most to them on a daily basis. And we spend a lot of time being really frustrated because we're doing a lot of shit that isn't that. Right now, I recognize that there are things that are immovable in our lives. We don't always have full autonomy over every single aspect and this, that, and the other. But there are very real ways that we can shift and that we can do things that are in alignment with what we want to be doing. Right. And this podcast is an example of this. I was like, of course, like this is what I love to talk about. You and I spend however many, dozens of hours a week talking about this. We talk about this in our free time. We talk about this with clients we work with. And I was like, this is an obvious place to spend time. Now, to do that, we both had to make sure that we said no to some other things, right? So that was also like a very real conversation. I remember you and I talked, I was like, yes, but like some things are going to have to go away. Like I can't just add more. So I want to do it. So what has to be, what has to get kicked out or what needs to be farmed out? And so we actually like hired some people on our team to like take some things and create some space. Point being is that you have to take like actionable steps in the direction of the things you want to do more of or how you want to show up in the world. It doesn't just happen accidentally. And it's not necessarily a function of like adding more to your plate. It's about adding more of the things that you give a shit about. And this was an example of that for me and you. I was like, okay, well then we got to we have to put some mechanisms in place so that happens. And I will say like, that's not something that I historically have always been great at. I just take on more because I think that I can or should, or I really like to work. So there's a part of that where I tell myself like it doesn't bother me, and it doesn't. Like it's some core component. Like, but I'm really proud of how you and I both like started from that place, right? Like it wasn't like, okay, let's do this and we're going to do it, Sunday morning before our families wake up, which I think is maybe would have typically, like I'll speak for myself. And I know you would have done the same thing if it was required, but we're like, no, like this needs to, like, how can we do this consistently and it be a value add for both of us? And that's that will certainly be a central theme in the conversations that we have, is that how do we show up in alignment with who we want to be and how we want to spend our time, such that it's actually a value add in our lives. It's not a detractor. And we could think about that through the lens of leadership. We could think about that in terms of our physical health. There's lots of places where when we try to do something that we care about, it ends up being more of a stress than a value add because we're driving from the wrong place, right? We've like created that thing from the wrong environment. So, I think this podcast is an encapsulation of, I think, real growth from our perspective, like our continual development as leaders ourselves. And like, how do we show up in a way that's like true to who we are and valuing our time in a way that is in alignment with what we talk about and like the clients we work with. And, it's very much like a practice what we preach situation. And that's something that I'm really excited to continue to lean into because I know that it's coming from purely a place of like value and excitement. Like I'm fucking pumped. Like we're going to do this every week and they're going to be like actionable and they're going to be consumable and we want it to be packed with value. I want it to be fun, and like I'm gonna say fuck a lot probably, and like I want it. It's authentic, right? Like it's something I care deeply about, and when I get excited, like yeah, I'm gonna cuss a lot, and I'm sorry for anyone who's listening to this in the car with their kids on the way to school. But yeah, so now let's talk about who is this for? Like, why are we doing this? I want to be clear, like, this is not just for us. It's something we're passionate about. But we truly, you and I both care deeply about leading with value first, right? So you and I both want to put valuable things out in the world. We want to do work that is intrinsically valuable, not for based solely on the return or the ROI of that thing, but because we believe that if you do great work, then it will come back to you, right? And that like that's just an inherent part of how you and I work. So who is this for? I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this in depth, and like continue as business owners with multiple businesses. We've both talked in depth about like who are really committed and like, I'll use my own language, called to serve. Like I think that like we have to be really, really clear on who we're called to serve, because we can't impact everybody at the same level. And we have created a lot of resources around understanding who our audience are, and we help our clients with that. And so I think when we look at who Impact Initiative and Impact Minded is most called to, is leaders that have the tendency to get overwhelmed and who have the tendency to have more things to do than time. And they are making a big impact. And so I think if you're a leader that finds yourself with more things to do and more people in your life asking you for things than you know what to do with sometimes, this is going to be the spot for you to come and like really get fed from multiple different perspectives of your life, and have a place to just like stop and rethink some things. If you're someone who like really truly wants to be a thought leader and do things different in your life and business, and you want to build a legacy, you're like someone who doesn't want to just check the boxes and leave this world from a mediocre place, then this is going to be the podcast for you, because we're going to talk about the shit that actually matters. We're going to challenge the way you think, and we're going to challenge the way that you see and do family and business and health, and everything in between. And so we're really committed to making sure that we can make an impact that doesn't look like the impact that was done 100 years ago, because we're living in different times. And so legacy also has innovation. If we're going to leave a legacy that's going to leave a big impact, it has to be innovative. And we have to think differently, because doing the same thing over and over again, trying to get a different result, is the definition of insanity. And so we have to solve new problems with new answers. And I think sometimes we just go back to the same old shit trying to get something different, and it just doesn't work. And so if you're a leader that's like, I've tried everything at this, I am stuck, I want to innovate this, I want to see something different, this is for you. And yeah, so how about you, Taylor? What would you say to that?
I agree, as per usual. But yeah, I'll just add, I think one of the things that I'm most committed to, and I think specific to who can find value in what we're going to talk about, is the individual who feels like their life is siloed, right? So if you are struggling with, I have my business over here in this vacuum, and I have my family over here in this vacuum, and then I have my personal health and my mental health and my emotional, and I don't have time for any of those, and I feel like I'm running in a million different directions, and none of those things feel like they're really working. One of the things that I am very committed to is helping people understand and develop the tools to bring those things together, because I don't believe that any of our goals have to be in conflict with one another, right? So from my personal experience, one of the things that I have learned from is that, in order to build a business and to be an entrepreneur and to lead a team and show up in my career the way that I want, that can't run in contrast to my goals with my family and with my personal health. And those, when we show up in those areas, it supports who we are as leaders. It supports our business goals. And so I want people to understand that is possible. And that comes from a place of like me fucking it up. I did that for a decade, right? And I watched those things suffer. I watched my health suffer. I watched my relationship suffer, and relationships with everyone. And it just doesn't have to be that way, right? And it also doesn't mean that we have to diminish the size of our goals. So I'm also not advocating that we have to like bring down, right, our goals and say, well, I'm just going to like shortchange myself, or I'm not going to set big aggressive goals. Like, yes, go do that. But also like you can do all of those things in concert, and they actually support one another. I actually think like when I'm my best self, I am most driven and most focused on my career goals and my health goals and my goals. Like I'm laser focused, but it's about bringing those things and aggregating them in a life that is congruent with like how you want to show up in the world and how you want to live. And that friction that we feel when we're in silos just is brutal, right? And I've been there, and I know you've been there as well. And so I want to talk about it. I know that we'll talk about just like how those things are layered in a way that feels productive. It feels fulfilling. It doesn't feel like you're burning the candle at both ends. It doesn't feel like you're running from, putting out this fire to putting out this fire to always being 20 minutes late to the thing for your kids, right? Like there's such a frantic kind of attitude that so many people walk around with daily, right? Like as soon as you wake up, your feet hit the ground. It's just like, oh shit, I'm 30 minutes behind. So if you feel like that, this is definitely for you, right? I think that's a lot of high performers. And I know that doesn't have to be the case. Now, will you have shit days? Absolutely, right? I'm not saying that like I've mastered it or you've mastered it, Christine, like we're on the top of the mountain, like looking down. Like, no, like we're in the shit. Like we're actively building businesses. We're building teams. We're like traveling all over the place. Like some days are just fucked up, and that's okay. Like you can go to sleep, but to that end, it's about having the tools to recognize like how to reset and how to realign and not feel like that totally destroys you, right? Like you can have a bad day or a tough day or a challenging day, recognize why that was the case, go to sleep, rest easy, and wake up and know what it looks like to go forward in alignment with like how you actually want to move through your day. And so that's something that I'm really committed to doing, as I know you are. Because if it's not fun, like if you're not enjoying it, right? Like we talk about this all the time. Like, good Lord, it's too fucking hard. Like if you're not enjoying it at some foundational level, I really think you should stop, right? Mm-hmm. Like to what end, right? Like, I mean, it takes too much. If we're talking about like being a high performer in your career, having big goals, pushing, building teams, building businesses, like that is a brutal thing to do, right? It is very hard. And it should be. Like, I think that also is an inherently amazing part of it because it pushes us to grow in ways that we would never have access to. But like, if you can't figure out a way and develop the skills and the tools to enjoy that, like, go do something else. I just think life's too short. I mean, to really boil it down. And I kind of hate to use that trope, but like, at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy it, if you're not having fun, and you can't see yourself getting to a place where you have those bright spots and you are enjoying it, I think you need to pivot, And so I think that's one of the things we want to touch on is like, how do you enjoy doing it? I don't think that most people need to quit. I just think that we need to help them understand how to find more joy in that process and how to be in more alignment with like what it looks like. Yeah. What additional pieces? What did I miss?
Well, like to that point, like I think that is like something that I think both of us, like you said, are like really passionate about. It's like life is too short, and like you'll hear more about my story as we go, but sitting in a terminal space in my health almost a decade ago did give me that perspective. And I think that like life is too short to like not have fun, but life is too, like, if you're not having fun, life also feels really long, right? Like anything is too long if you freaking hate it and it's not fun. And we say that, and I think part of the decision, and that's something that like we really want to start this conversation too, with just pointing out that these decisions to start something new or in something, like I think we either have this idea in our society right now, it's like if it's not working, we have to quit. And like we've seen this, entire society in the last couple of years, the Great Resignation. And so I'd like to propose that like we don't believe that just because you're not having fun, you need to stop doing it and like make a huge change. Like sometimes it actually just takes new perspective and realigning with what matters to you and why you started doing it in the first place to understand how to have fun in it. And I think so many times, because you and I have a tendency to like just decide to do something and then make it hard and like drive at it from such an intense level that like all of a sudden the thing that like was supposed to give life actually takes our life. And so I think it's really important. Like that was one of the things that we wanted to start with is like, how do you make decisions? How do you decide to say yes or say no to something? How do you decide to take something out of your calendar to make room for it? And when is it the right time? And how do you figure those things out? And I think from that perspective, it's like you really do have to reconnect to what matters most to you and why you were doing it in the first place. And then sometimes like you and I will just like get going at something and we're running so hard, so fast that we stop having fun. Like our communications, like more from a place of disappointment because it's not moving fast enough and it's not growing fast enough and we're not doing it well enough. And it's like, also we just started and like, also this gets to be fun. And if it's not fun, like you said, why are we doing this? We could be doing anything else. And there's Tony Robbins says it best, like there's not a lack of opportunity, there's a lack of creativity. And so if you're telling yourself that there's not opportunity and you have to be in this position, you have to be in this job, you have to be in this relationship, you have to whatever, if you're in that state, I call bullshit. You have a choice, you have the opportunity to actually shift that. And you might have to say no to certain things to make room for the right thing. Your best yes is always going to be important. But I think for this, it was an upgrade. It was like, we get to do this thing. We want to do this thing. We're going to have fun with this thing. Because if I add something to my calendar that's going to be from a state of resentment and I'm going to walk into it with a have to attitude, I know I'm going to resent this. And if my schedule's too full, I am going to resent it. So that was a lot of this process too, was how do we make this decision to where we're not going to resent it and it's not taking from something else? Like you're saying, like, I love that language. It, like, even as you were talking about it, just reminds me of how important that is to walk in with that get to attitude versus have to, and build from that place and say yes to that place. And it's given us so much life. Like the things that we took off our plate, we were just talking about that this morning before we got started. It's actually life-giving. Like we're both pumped about the things and the people we hired to make this possible. And it's not automatically, a podcast automatically is not tied to revenue. So investment is also something, anything that I'm going to say yes to, I have to look at the investment that's required to make sure it is my best yes. And if there's not like a return in some way, it's a hell no. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And there was investment. We hired people to do this, and there's not an exact financial return out of the gates with a project like this. And so I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit too, Taylor, of like, how do you make those decisions? And like, how did you make the decision? Because you're better at that than I am. Like, I'm a yes girl. I'm like, let's do it. And like, let's do it yesterday. And you're like, there's probably like an organization. We should probably like think this out and like talk to the team and map this out. I'm like, that's a great idea. Yes to that. And so like,
I like that. That's how you think my voice sounds. Like, thanks for,
but you are way better at that. That's why you're the operations person. And I'm like, I always come in with some big vision. I'm like, let's do this thing. And you're like, yes, but like, hold on, there's a little cart before the horse. So yeah, speak to that. Cause I love that when you do that. And also sometimes I'm like, but I want to do it now, but you're good at that.
I mean, so much so that for one of our businesses, we had to hire another operations person just to back me up. So, there's actually two. I'm not even the operations person, like, and I still have to, like, we need two of us.
Vision fairy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, overarchingly, the thing that I always keep in mind, and it really is like a mantra for me is, you know, if you say yes to the wrong thing, you're saying no to the right thing. And because there's only so much space, right? And there is this very real, and it's almost like I can visualize it when I think through opportunities. So like, okay, like if I say yes to this, then there is a door that closes somewhere else that I don't know about, but is there, right? Because like you said, there's unlimited possibilities. There's no shortage of shit to do. And now you have to be open, you have to pursue it, you have to be, or it doesn't just fall in your lap, but like if you're moving and you'll get stuff comes across your desk, right? So to speak. So I can like see that. And then I really tried, then I just like put myself in that place. I'm okay, like if there are two doors, like is this the door I want to walk through? Right? Or am I, or if the answer is no, like, then I need to be open to what the other thing is. And so for, in terms of that investment piece, if I'm clear that like, this is the best yes, whatever it is, then I also, the next thing that I think about is who needs to be involved over and above myself to make this happen, because I'm also under no illusion that it happens with just me. And it's not that I couldn't make it happen, right? Like, we could have got this off the ground, right? Like, we could have done it, and it would have, whatever. Like, we could have. I think that what I always want to think about, and this is taking a lot of work on my part, is to think about things from like a support first perspective. So instead of me taking it all on, or me and you taking it all on, who can we invite into this opportunity that provides support for us and provides an opportunity for someone else, and also bolsters the outcome, right? Like when we invite other people in, when we ask for support, the end result of that thing is always so much better. And that's the thing that from a leadership perspective, I enjoy most is who are the people involved? I say all the time, like if I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to find a new room to be in. And that can be on like a project by project basis, like something like this podcast, where like, I don't need to be the expert. I don't need to know what the logo is supposed to look like or how to, like, who are the people, right? And I don't need to be the expert. And then certainly overarchingly from a leadership perspective or like a team development perspective, really like inviting people in and then genuinely giving a shit about what they have to say, right? And we'll get into this. This is a whole nother kind of thing. But like, we say that we want that as leaders, and then we actually don't listen to the stuff that people around us are saying. So from a leadership perspective, you have to be actually interested in listening and even deploying those ideas. Or, you can't just be like top down. It's like a nicety that you're having this meeting and like hearing people out. And so I think, again, I want to, one of my goals for myself is to, as quickly as possible, think about things from a support perspective. And then that makes the investment piece like kind of a hell yes, right? I'm like, well, I'm not interested in doing it alone. So then what does that take? Like, what's required? And then, yeah, there's like a planning, like you said. I mean, I'm a planner, like I'm a tactics and like operations person. So then like back myself into that, right? And for me, that goes all the way back to like, what does that look like from a workflow perspective, like on my calendar, right? So then you and I sat down, we're like, okay, now like where does the time come from, right? So then what needs to move? So that you actually like take that all the way to its kind of, in my mind, like its endpoint, which is, when does it happen? How do I build my schedule around it? I don't have a lot of free time. So when does it happen, right? We have to make some decisions, and then you start to like compartmentalize. So I think again, we touched on this earlier, is like, it doesn't mean that when we say yes, it means we have to take on more. It means we're saying yes to more of the right stuff. And I think that is a misconception, or even just kind of like it's like a trap that we get stuck in, that we think that there just always has to be more. And I think I want to task people with thinking about like doing more of the right stuff and getting rid of the wrong stuff. And I promise you, if anybody looks at your schedule, your calendar, or where you're spending your time, and I say this all the time, like, show me your calendar and I'll show you what you prioritize, right? And so if your calendar doesn't reflect the things that you want to be doing, there's adjustments to be made somewhere, right? You have some autonomy over that time. You said yes to something that's not in alignment, and you could say yes to something else. Now, I realize that takes work, right? It took us 6 months to really get this off the ground. Like, it takes work. You have to build into it. You have to prioritize. You have to invest. Like, it's not a passive procedure, but like the opportunity's there. And so I want to help people see that, like, it doesn't mean doing more. Certainly doesn't mean doing more by yourself. I think the support piece is huge. And yeah, we're gonna get into that and more. I mean, that's really our fundamental belief, is that and how we work with people is, really leading from a place of like what matters most, right? And understanding like who you are at a foundational level, and then building a culture around that, supporting people, knowing that leadership is about being like in service of people, right? That's something that you and I talk a lot about, and I think that really is a big shift. Is that leadership is a service-based role, so you have to give a shit about people too, right? And I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth there, and I've learned that the hard way. Leadership and management are not the same thing. I thought I was a leader, and I was for a long time, and what I really was a really shitty manager. And there's so much opportunity for growth there, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And okay, so let's do like a 1 minute, like, main points. Like, what do you want people to take away from this episode? What are your main points that people can like focus on from what we, just even this first episode? What do you want them to know?
I mean, first and foremost, again, I apologize for my language. I have a primary takeaway. Taylor cusses a lot. No, I think, again, so who this is for, if you are, if you're struggling to understand what these different areas of your life look like, if you're struggling in your relationships, if you feel like your career goals are pulling you astray from your personal goals, if there's a misalignment there, if you're struggling with the team dynamics, like the culture component of your work, how you're showing up as a leader, if you're feeling misalignment in your life and you are someone who is driven in your career and you are focused on being a leader and developing your leadership skills, like this, you are who we're talking to. And because it's something that genuinely comes from a place of like, we want to help. We've been there. We continue to grapple with these things in our own businesses. And we want this to be actionable. So the second point that I'll make is that this is not high level pie in the sky leadership models, and these, like, this is actionable. Like the thing that you and I have always talked about is when you go back to work on Monday, you have to be able to put this into play. Right now, that could be whenever, but Impact Initiative was born from the belief that leadership development can and should be actionable. It should be able to be implemented more or less immediately and move the needle in the key areas of our careers and our businesses that we are struggling with. And so all of these episodes are going to be actionable. We want you to leave with something you can actually implement. This is not going to be leadership theory. This is going to be based on real world experiences from people who are actively building businesses and have been serial entrepreneurs for their entire lives. And we're just coming from a place of value. I want to flatten the learning curve for anybody that listens, because again, it should be fun. It's not an uphill grind. It's really, really hard, but it should be something that you enjoy. And we're here to help you do it better, have more fun, build an amazing team, and build like kick-ass businesses. Like this, building businesses is awesome. That's something that you and I both care about. So like, also let's do that, right? Like, let's make an impact. If you want to, exit your company for $100 million, absolutely. But like, let's do it through the lens of like real meaningful leadership, building amazing teams, and like making sure that the business fulfills its responsibility to support the people involved. So that was more than a minute, but that's my closest version of that.
All right. Top 3 action steps that someone can take away today and implement into their life to see change and make a real impact.
You go. I've been talking my face off.
Okay. I think start with intention. Like Taylor and I started this with an intent, like the intention. You have to know why you're doing something. Understand your best yes, what your best yes actually looks like. And you'll have to do step 1 before you do step 2. And then understand the impact it's going to have on the people around you. I think, Taylor, you had some great points with that. Like, you have to look at the through line all the way through, and have fun. Last one's have fun. If you're not having fun, make a change, because it should be fun. Life is either too long or too short if you're not having fun. And so make it fun, and you'll see the impact that you want to see, and you'll probably be more in alignment with your goals and why you're doing it in the first place if you're using fun as a metric versus just the bottom line as a metric. So let us know if any of those are helpful, or what impact you've seen by implementing any of those things in your life right now.